right, welcome to the big show this week. I am very happy this week that we have with us Blake Fields and Tom Balding, and they're here to do a little bit of a recap on last week's Under 21 World GC Championship that was held at Sarasota County Croquet Club in Venice, Florida. And both were also part of the GC World Teams Championship, the Team USA's first win back in February in Tasmania. So we may talk about that a little bit as well. And then, of course, from the perspective of under 21, Blake was playing in the event and trying to win his third straight world title, and also did a little commentary there at the end. And then Tom also did just a bit of commentary as well. So anyway, thank you guys for joining me on short notice, and it's great to have you here and great to talk croquet with you guys. There's so much about this event. I'm not even sure where exactly to start. I mean, maybe I just start with what it was like to all of a sudden be radio broadcasters, at a moment when, hey, the video's gone and you're just shifting gears on the fly. What was that like, and, how stressful was that?
I mean, it was definitely a different style of commentary than what you're normally trying to do, because if you assume that people can sort of watch the action with you, you're more interested in making it engaging, making sure that you're sort of dissecting what's going on. You're taking a lot of time to talk about tactics. You're taking more time to talk about strengths and weaknesses of players, maybe even tell some anecdotes about other things that you've seen that are not going on camera at the moment. And then as soon as people lose that visual, you don't have any of that time to sort of go on tangents or to discuss what you just saw. You have to just keep up with the action as it happens. And for those young guys, they play quite quickly. So you're going straight from the balls are now here. He just did this. Now the balls are here. He's about to do this. And, it's a little bit more frantic, but I wouldn't say stressful. I think me and Blake enjoyed it. It's just, it's a completely different style of what you have to say and how you have to process what you're seeing than when you're doing it with the visual for everyone to see at the moment.
Right.
Yeah, just adding on like what Tom said, we didn't have like a lot of time when the camera was down to like go over the strategy and like the actual shots that are being played. We kind of just had to kind of assess and like view the court and kind of like give everyone an overview of the current status of the game. So instead of like him and I would like talk about strategy and talk about like the momentum of the game and like certain ideas. But when that camera went out, it was honestly kind of entertaining. It was more like just play by play where we turned into the like sports announcers. So we were just able to talk about like, oh, this ball's this far west from the hoop, this far back from the hoop, this ball's going to play. Here's the score. Here's who's going to play. And then we really tried to build like a kind of like a form of excitement, just because people couldn't like really form it for themselves when they couldn't see the video. So we were kind of trying to like, oh, this shot's going to be stressful, and we were kind of trying to like be able to show kind of our reactions so that they'd be able to like understand like, oh, that was a crucial shot, or oh, he just hit a really bad shot. So we kind of had to build that for them. And I don't know, Tom and I think we had a lot of fun with that. So that was kind of interesting. Definitely would not have been fun for all three games to try to keep up with.
No.
So, yeah, no, not at all. But for that like last half of game three, we had a lot of fun doing that. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's, it's kind of interesting because I think I rewatched the, merged together with the audio version of the last game on Tuesday night or whatever. And I mean, you guys did a great job. And I remember listening to it at the time. I was like, I did have a pretty good picture, and it kind of played out when I saw the video, exactly like you said. One thing, I've seen a lot of live stream, and it's an interesting point because I don't know how many other people do this. But, like a best of 5 AC final or something, goes like all day, whatever. And a lot of times I can't sit around all day. So I'm like putting the phone in my pocket and headphones and like listening. So I don't know if that's as well known or I don't know if other people do that as well. But like sort of that radio commentary, I'm just listening a lot of times to it. So it is actually kind of important.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where even during the day, like I remember reading in the chat, some people responded very positively to it, even when the video was down, saying this is even more exciting, or it added some sort of energy that I think normal commentary in croquet doesn't normally get, because you can see it. It is being recorded. You can rewind later. We're taking more time even in the moment. We won't even talk about every play they make. We'll talk about other things. And Now it's like you're putting a hyperfixation on the moment to moment action and what's going to happen. So I think for a lot of people that even if they're, not paying direct attention to the normal live stream, or they're not giving it 100% of their focus, it pulls them back in. Where it's like, okay, now I'm getting everything, even if I'm not seeing it, even if I'm walking around town, I'm still getting everything, and I can be immersed in it.
Yeah. I noticed
Yeah.
it's nice for Ben to be helping out a lot, offering advice to you guys in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think when the commentary, when people couldn't see the live stream, I think a lot of people when they're watching those live streams, maybe some of the times they don't even have the audio on. They're not even really listening to what's going on. They're just looking sometimes at that visual, the live stream. They're just accessing it for themselves, and they're able to just figure it out by themselves. But it almost felt like we were almost kind of more needed, obviously, when you didn't have the camera. People were listening a lot more to what you were saying. And, we were able to give people an exact kind of play-by-play. And it kind of forced them to listen to us without having to be able to see that visual. So instead of them analyzing everything for themselves, we were able to do it for them. And, I think a lot of people, some people they know kind of everything. And they kind of, I think sometimes they put the live stream on mute and they just do whatever they want and they just kind of view it for themselves. So I think this was actually truly important for us to be able to kind of explain every situation in the game. And we still worked on talking about the strategy a lot, but we were able to just talk exactly about why each ball went where. And no, it was good.
Yeah, I think I would just offer, prior to the video going out, the commentary was good, and I appreciate the commentary. It makes it much more entertaining, much more like a real sport to me. So, Tom, you did a great job, and Blake, when you stepped in and were doing it as well, it's like this is a pro team, and it was really entertaining. As for the event itself, I guess, Blake, should we start with kind of how the event went for you? I mean, this is something, I guess, really not comparable to what anybody's tried to attempt in croquet before. So maybe can you talk about that and, the pressure on you or yourself or for outside, I don't know, and then kind of how the event went for you as well.
Yeah, so it was a good week of croquet. Going into that tournament, being the under 21s, it should have been the easiest of the 3 world championships I just played to win. The pressure was a little bit more than normal, just because going into my world championship in October, it was not expected that I was supposed to win that. On paper, I wasn't even supposed to come out of the block. So that was just kind of a big surprise for me. Going into February with our team, we were ranked 3rd. We knew we had a good chance to win. But when you have a bunch of guys that are able to rely on, like Tom and Matthew and Ben and Steven, they're just guys that you trust to play with you all the time. And when we're competing for a world championship together, we knew that even if not all of us were firing on all cylinders at the same time, that someone was going to be able to get the job done and someone was going to step up and be able to get that win for the team. So we all kind of didn't have a lot of pressure going into that tournament, maybe some more than others in doubles or in some crucial moments. But we knew that someone would have our backs even if the games didn't go to plan. And then going into this tournament, I had high hopes. I was expecting I knew it was going to be a hard matchup in the semis and the finals. The hardest part about the under 21s is you don't really have a proper warm-up until you get into that late round. So going in the block play and then the early rounds of knockout, they were all 2 games except for one. And, I was playing good croquet early on. Tactically, I was able to kind of just do whatever I wanted and just truly work on my swing. So then it kind of had to switch gears later in the tournament. And so all of a sudden I go from having an easy 2-game match back-to-back to all of a sudden a difficult best-of-5 that just kind of pops up out of nowhere. So that's a little bit difficult part about that tournament. But really nice to be able to play down at that venue again. It was exciting to be able to see some of my friends there this week. Tom came down, Kyle was there, Matthew, Sharif. They were reffing, commentating, just helping out all week. It was kind of nice to see. And that's kind of the weirdest part about that tournament is obviously all the guys I'm really close with aren't playing in that tournament with me. We're not competing against each other. So I show up to this tournament, and even though I've been around this game just as long as any guys on the team, I know like nobody there. So, we have a 28-person field, and I probably know, I'd say probably 10 people out of that field I'd met before. So all of a sudden there's new people showing up everywhere. So it's kind of like a weird vibe. It's kind of like it's your first time showing up to a tournament, even though you just won a world championship in October, and it's like, that's kind of the interesting part, but that was a good event. Fell short in the semis. Swing was a little off. Played good the rest of the week though. Just had that bad best of five. But no, it was really good to be able to see everyone and meet a lot of new people, which was nice. So yeah.
Am I remembering that semifinal with Fallacy wrong? I mean, I know you got kind of off to a slow start, but it got into like game 3, and I think you won that one, and then game 4 it was like kind of like, you know, we hate to say luck, but things didn't go your way necessarily.
Yeah. Game 4 was just a really frustrating game. Games 1 and 2, he outplayed me. I was missing a lot of clears, bad positional shots, couldn't miss a hoop shot. In all 4 games, I couldn't really miss a hoop shot. Anytime I saw a hoop, I was shooting it, and I was making it most of the time, but I couldn't hit it clear. So the hoops were fairly easy, which helped a lot of people. You know, if people weren't strong hoop shooters, the soft soil there for quadways, the hoops were bullied, and a lot of people can make them even from a big angle. So there wasn't a lot of missed hoop shots for a lot of people, so you had to truly hit your clears there. But yeah, so game 3, I was down 4-2 after being 2 games down. I ran 7 from the boundary. I had a nice hoop 8. Hoop 9, I ran from not too deep, but didn't go through the hoop by that far. So I went up 5-4 after being 4-2 down. And then hoop 10, I ran from corner 4. So I went up 6-4, and then I proceeded to run hoop 11 off the north boundary, probably 4 yards west of the hoop. So hoops 10 and 11 ran from super long distances. So swing was feeling good towards the end of that game, but still only with the hoop shots. I still wasn't hitting those clears. So that was kind of the struggle, just being able to get in positions to actually have hoop shots. So then going into game 4, I was down 4-1, played really good croquet to get back to 4-4. So at 4-1, I was like, it's now or never. You have to step up. So I got back to 4-4. I blocked myself at hoop 9 on my second positional shot. I had a 3-yard jump, jumped over the top of the hoop. So he went up 5-4, and hoop 9 was just kind of failed hoop. And then hoop 10, didn't quite make a decision there on shooting the hoop or setting up in a wired position, made the wrong decision. Just really bad hoop shot. So he went up 6-4 off of that. This is when it should have been easily 5-5. And then, just hoop 11 tried to control and got stuck in the jaws. And he took hoop 11. So, no, game 4, I outplayed him. Went down a little early, but I played better croquet. And in game 4, I tried the jaws hoop 3 from probably, a foot out and slid through with his ball outsides down at 4.
Yeah.
So then I had no shot going down the hoop 4. Same thing happened at hoop 7. Tried the jaws hoop 7, down 4-2. And I still ended up winning hoop 8, but it gave him complete control of hoop 8. And 7 ran through, no backswing again. So just loose hoops kind of made it difficult for me in those games, because he ran some hoop shots at hoop 9. He ran hoop 9 in game 4 from, I'm going to say honestly, probably a 65-degree angle, 70-degree angle. I mean, a hoop shot that shouldn't be possible that ended up running out to the halfway peg on the east boundary. So just some loose hoop conditions made it a little difficult to jaws that I got unfortunate with in game 4, and he ran some nice shots. He was clearing better. I was shooting hoops better. So I think game 5 would have been just down to who had the best touch and who went ahead early. So yeah, frustrating semi. Played really good the rest of the week though. Had some really, really good matches. Better than my World Championship in October. So I was really happy with that. It was just that one match that kind of missed some clears and kind of fell apart. But yeah.
Right. So Tom, you got to, watch a lot of croquet, and, I hope your voice has recovered, especially from that, I think, Thursday where it was getting dark and you spoke for about, I don't know, it seemed like 12 hours straight. But
probably about that.
What are your highlights, impressions of the event? I mean, you saw a lot of croquet down there.
Something Blake said right there towards the end kind of sums up a lot of what I saw, not just from Blake's and Fozzie's play, but from everybody's play. It's a very young tournament, and just by virtue of that, a relatively inexperienced tournament compared to, you have guys who've been playing for 20 years, and some of these guys are all of them are less than 21 years old. Most of them are less than 20 years old. So you saw some things that you don't normally see at a world championship like that. So like positional play was the biggest one, and that's kind of what Blake alluded to. Just game 5 would have come down to touch. A lot of games came down to who just had better placement, because all the young players hit well, they hit hard, they run hoops well. They're very aggressive in their tactics by their nature, but not all of them have developed their touch to the point that you see on some more experienced older players. And that kind of forces you into situations where you have to hit a lot. Uh, Guilty. So, but guilty a lot. So, it's one of those things. It makes for a very interesting spectacle. And it really shows a lot of their talents, but you can just see like Levi won that tournament, not just because he hardly couldn't miss most matches, but because his positions were just better than most of his opponents. Levi, despite his sort of big Solomon swing, has very good touch. He did have some missteps like everyone else did, and that did give some of his opponents more breathing room than he ought to have given them. But the same could be said for them as well. So it's just interesting to see after coming back from like an Open Shaw and the Worlds in October, where despite some difficult conditions, you have these, players that can just put balls on dimes from 20 yards away repeatedly, and what it forces you to have to do versus someone like me who just like, I might get within 5 yards of the, from a distance like that. And it was watching a lot more of that style of croquet. That was interesting to me. I hadn't seen that on a mass scale in a while at an event of that caliber. So it just, it's a good reminder to everyone watching it and to myself that, it's such an important aspect of the game, positions, touch, tactics, that it's easy to overlook just because, I can hit from anywhere I want to. Well, you don't have to, right? And you will miss. Blake had, like you said, he had really, really, really good matches the whole way through. Slow start, maybe wasn't making his clearances and things, in game 1 and 2. But, if your positional play is good enough, then you won't be forced into some of those situations. And, same with Fozzy. It was like against Levi, his positions just weren't always that good. And he wasn't forcing Levi into a lot of difficult situations. So I truly think the tournament was won more on positional play than it was on super accurate hitting.
Yeah, did you offer a stat on that? What you thought like positional versus hoop shooting was? Something like 60% or something like that?
Yeah, so it's one of the things that, I like to tell my students, and I'm sure I got this from somebody somewhere. It's probably David Malouf, but, I'm not willing to put his name on anything, definitely just because I truly can't remember. But I would say 60% of what makes you a great golf croquet player is touch. 40% is the shooting. And that's, from personal experience, a lot, because for a long time I had no touch and I had great shooting, and I wasn't winning an overwhelming majority of my games, especially against good opponents. Like David spent a whole summer just putting me in the dirt, even though I could hit a lot stronger and a lot better than he could at the time, just because his tactics were better and his touch was impeccable. And he let me just shoot myself into oblivion. So, you need both to be great. Reg Bamford is a wonderful example, and Robert Fletcher, people who have not only incredible accuracy, but also pinpoint touch. And there's a reason that they've been the best players in the world for a very, very long time. Just because when you have the combination of those two things, there's not a whole lot of situations you can't get yourself out of or that you can't best your opponent in. But if you're missing one or the other, especially touch, I would say, by a slight margin, then you're going to have to do a lot more work. And if you're not exactly on your game at every given moment, you're going to falter.
Yeah. I wonder, a lot of people said, they love this event. It's the most interesting event. I just wonder if a lot of it is, I guess, the world level. You kind of have a lot of the same characters almost at every event. And then in under 21, it changes, like college sports, I guess. But I thought it fascinating. There was enough live streaming. It was like someone got featured every day that I had no idea about, and then I learned something, like a Simon Donchev or John Assayad. These were players I got to watch, hadn't seen before. But I don't know. Do you guys get that sense as well?
I didn't know most people at the event. I probably met less of them than Blake has, other than Blake, Levi, and Jack, and a couple others. Ethan. I would say at least 75% of the field was completely unknown to me.
Yeah.
I knew some of the Americans from working with them, the college kids from like Oklahoma Wesleyan, but hadn't really seen them play. I've met them once or twice with them the last year, so I wasn't really exposed to where they were at now. But yeah, a lot of complete unknowns for me.
Yeah, I think the Americans. I think we had 8 people there, Tom, something like that. We had like 7 or 8 Americans there, and I had never met anyone on the U.S. team before. So, I've been playing in the U.S. now in tournaments for, let's say, 11 years. Played every national title, traveled all over, played these tournaments, and I never met one of my teammates before. And if I haven't met my teammates, you can only imagine how it is for people from other places in the world coming to this tournament. I'm like, there was a lot of people I hadn't met before. I've seen, you've seen them around maybe online, but that's kind of the hard thing too. Is like you coming in these tournaments and going into my GC Worlds in October, going to the Open Shot, and I think Tom could agree with this, that it's really easy to play croquet when you're able to kind of survey your opponent and kind of really figure out their like strengths and weaknesses. So against Robert, obviously in my final, the thing that was key for me was forcing myself to have short clearances. I knew Robert wasn't going to play overly aggressive in that final. He wasn't going to shoot long hoops, only because the hoops were really difficult. So I kept going for blocks and cuddle shots I normally wouldn't ever go for. And I was just, instead of taking a 14-yard clear or a 21-yard clear, he would stop shot me, and all of a sudden I have a 7-yard clear with another ball in position. And then going into these under 21s, you're playing these guys, and most of them have aggressive play styles. But, in a best of three, the entire first game, I was kind of spending my time kind of judging and figure out how my opponents were going to play. So that's kind of the difficult part about never meeting any of these people before. They don't have any videos online you could watch. Just not a lot of exposure. They haven't played a lot of games. You can't see the opponents they played. So this is a truly difficult tournament for like top players to analyze the field and be able to figure out how they need to like perform to win. Because obviously it's not always truly about how you're playing. Your opponent kind of plays a part in it as well in golf croquet. So that was a little bit of the difficult part. I think Tom could agree to that. At the Open Shot, we knew everyone pretty well. We knew how they played. So like when we were playing doubles against teams, we knew who was shooting hoops. We knew he was clearing. And that was kind of like the helpful part for us during that tournament. But yeah.
I saw 3 of the Oklahoma players last fall. I played with them, and I mentioned it when Chris Clark and I were previewing it. And I thought one of them might make it to the knockout. I was a little surprised watching them play. They were playing like a different game than they were playing when I saw them in Oklahoma. They were just they seemed a little more timid and not hitting as hard down there. But
right.
I think Luca got to the final and played, so that was good.
Yeah,
Luca's a good player. They were all pretty good.
Yeah, they just seem to be playing a different style than when I saw them, or just maybe I don't have the right perspective. But
I think it can be difficult for a lot of them. That's their first. They don't play a lot of tournaments around. One of the reasons Blake has not encountered most, if not all of them. I've worked with them once or twice at different sort of youth development programs. It can be difficult when you're playing at maybe a club that you view as more local or something a little bit less high stakes versus when you get that shirt on and you walk out, representing the United States. Like my first time on the U.S. team was horrific with the MAC, and a lot of reasons that could have gone into it being horrific other than just nerves, but I definitely was nervous, and I definitely was, not doing the things I did well at home very well over there. So, it can be difficult to be as loose and be as free in your play when you haven't had that experience, because it means so much more to you. And now that they've been through it, many of them for the first time, then hopefully you'd see them next time be able to play a little bit more true to themselves if their game is a little bit bigger than that, because I could see it in them. I knew it was there. They didn't feel comfortable bringing it out necessarily.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And, I think they play a lot at Tulsa, and Tulsa's relatively slow. So I'm pretty sure Sarasota was not lightning fast, but a different change of speed from what we're used to in the Midwest. So, let's see. So I guess I learned a few other things during this event. I don't know if you heard these things, but I did learn about running the gambit. I also heard the term chocolate fish. Did you guys hear chocolate fish?
I did. Who was it who said that? Was that Karen?
Karen Bisley? Yeah.
I can't remember off the top of my head what it refers to, but that was the first I heard of it.
Scoring 2 hoops, I guess.
Scoring 2 hoops, okay.
A chocolate fish thing where she's in Australia, right? Or
Yeah.
So that was new, and then running the gambit. That's a fascinating one that I actually hadn't heard before.
Yeah, there's the gambit's an interesting one. Tom can speak on the gambit.
Yeah. I spread the good gospel when I can.
I think there's one other kind of theory we're forgetting about, and it's the Maloof theory. It's hoop 2 doesn't matter.
Hoop 2 does not matter.
So Kyle Maloof believes hoop 2 is the least important hoop in golf croquet. So he believes do whatever you want at that hoop, play aggressive, do whatever you normally wouldn't do, and he believes if you lose that hoop, it is totally fine. So there was a few things this week we learned. The gambit, obviously, the honeycut gambit, down 5-3, first to 9 instead of 4-4, and your opponent going first to 9. Um, Personally, the Honeycutt Gambit for me, I'd rather be 4-4 and taking that clearance at 9 instead of trying to set up because I know with my positional play, my setup shot's probably going to end up at corner 4. Um, so I'd rather take a clearance than try to set up and end up in front of hoop 9.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the Gambit's good for people with good positional play. But by hoop 9, I'd rather be taking a clear, I think. But yeah, I don't know about Tom. What do you think about the Gambit?
I gotta say, I've had with how spotty my touch sometimes even is, I've had overwhelming success with the Gambit in just my mind. Even at the Open shot, I found myself in a lot of games where I was down 5-3 and ended up winning at the hook or something like that. I was trying and failing to convince the rest of the team that we should name a version of the Gambit after me, like the Tom variant, but or the balling
6-3.
variant. Yeah, you
6-3
go down. You go down
6-3 down
6-3 and then win at the hook after being 5-3 down. So, but that didn't stick. But yeah, it's one of those interesting things where that we have a lot of this in croquet as opposed to other sports where there is no data really. The only hard and fast data that I think really I'm aware of or was told for years was if you're the first ball to the hook and you're not short, then you have a 70% chance of winning the game. And that's by some sort of aggregated numbers that someone came up with. And, that has, I bet, relatively been true for the most part of croquet. And people are aware of it. But nobody really has any data for any other parts of the game that affects strategic thinking. And most other sports, there are data points for just about everything that you do. So it's just one of those things, again, that kind of separates or kind of betrays the maybe young, I hesitate to use the word amateur, but though it is an amateur sport, nature of croquet, that we don't quite have all of these hard and fast ideas, stats, or rules for different strategies. And so, talking about the Gambit and talking about what I call the Kyle corollary and all these other things, it's fun and it's funny, but it also, I think, could one day potentially be something that we actually do have numbers for. And I think we should. I think there should be ideas about, like, from these positions, what's the most likely, outcomes given both players in a vacuum or something, or just based on statistical averages. And I think that's important for our game as we go along, and it gives people something to talk about, to think about.
Yeah, I mean, do you guys like the Hoop 13 ending? I mean, 70% is a pretty huge advantage, really.
I mean, it definitely, knowing that and, knowing how difficult it is to unseat people, you play a lot harder for an advantage at 13 when you're 6-5 down at hoop 12. You won't just make the hoop just because you can. You'll oftentimes try to set up a rush, flick off to 13, different things. Whole strategies have developed around nullifying that advantage. So what could be the same
I
at
think,
hoop 9?
I think the hoop 13, 70%, that's kind of where the statistics get kind of difficult because, like Tom's talking about, people could end up on sides. Like we saw Reg's final versus Ahmed Nazar in Cairo, Game 5. Reg is on sides and runs 13 after Ahmed puts a ball right in front. Reg was down 6-2, and he won 7-6. He wasn't first. Ahmed was still in front of the hoop, and Reg still ran it from the boundary. And, people set up the rush behind hoop 12 to rush back up north to hoop 13. So even if someone sets up in front of that hoop, technically, if the statistics, they're still going to be rushing a ball up and having a hoop shot, so you might still not win that. Or, Tom had a quarterfinal last in October where he was unfortunate and his opponent was onside right in front of hoop 13. And his opponent ended up winning off of that shot, even though Tom was still first to 13. So that's where it gets difficult with the stats. Is kind of there's so many variants and ways to play hoop 13. I do think it truly, obviously, is an advantage to go first to hoop 13. Even if you're fairly short, you could try to get a block or still kind of control the hoop. But I don't know how much of an advantage it is when you go first to hoop 13 and you end up putting the ball 5 yards deep and your opponent gets tight to the hoop. So hoop 13 is kind of one of those difficult hoops because there's so many different ways to play it and so many different strategies you could play in order to have an advantage there. So I mean that's an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose because of how 11 and 12 work out, you can get an advantage by scoring 11 at 12. So that's possible to happen. So it's almost like a little bit kind of fair that maybe the non-scoring player gets a potential advantage at the deciding hoop, but I don't know. We don't know the stats on that one either, right?
I wasn't saying. I was just going to just sort of piggyback on Blake's remark that, like, the advantage in a vacuum is 70%, but in real life it's probably nowhere close. But one might get into a chicken and the egg sort of argument there, which is the advantage no longer true because people were aware of it and therefore came up with all these different ways to counteract it? Or was it just never maybe as perfect to begin with? And that's kind of the way I see potentially everything strategic. Like, part of, a lot of people call hoop 11 the most important hoop in the game. If you're 5'5" and you go up 6'5", then again, that sort of hoop 13 advantage kicks in. Automatically, it's like, well, I'm at least a 70% favorite to win this game. And we could just take that backwards to a certain point and see where it goes to. But you would assume that there are strategies that people would have in place to offset these numerical advantages because it's not in a vacuum. Someone is doing certain things better than the other person, and someone has the ability to play certain shots to promote themselves or help themselves to take away certain numeric advantages. So it's just one of those interesting things that we're so early on in this process of like keeping track of these numbers. We don't carry data through every game. You don't know every move that was made, who scored what hoop with which ball. In a game like chess, we literally can go back to tournaments from the 30s and see transcripts of every move that was made by each side. And you can pull from a database millions of games long to see what the true percentages are at all levels of play for certain moves and certain openings and things. We don't have that for croquet, even though we have some similar strategic structures to chess in a lot of regards. So it'd be interesting to see as we move into the future, as we film more games and we can start going back into these archives, what we're going to start to see with these supposed numerical advantages.
Yeah. So I guess what we haven't really done is talk much about the final match between Levi and Fauzi. I mean, you guys have thoughts on that? We touched on it a little bit, but did that third game go to hoop 13?
It did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
And the first ball to hoop 13 was the ball that won the hoop.
Right.
So.
Right.
It was a great ball. Good touch. Good touch.
Yeah, but both balls were good touch. They're kind of arguing against their stats there. The final, honestly, if I had to give my true opinion on it, I thought the final was kind of disappointing. Levi played really well, but I did not see Fauzi put up any kind of fight until maybe late in that third game. First two games, Levi won kind of convincingly. Game one, we didn't really even see Fauzi shoot hard at any hoops or clearances. Levi had some really good touch. He ran all of his hoops. He center balled his clearances. So game one was kind of disappointing to see 7-2. Game two, I thought Fauzi was going to come out hot and kind of have an advantage early on in that game and kind of want revenge after game one. And kind of ended up being kind of the same as game one. He made a few nice hoop shots, but one thing I can notice about the final is that his swing was completely different than when he played me in the semis. He was gripping the mallet further up and standing more upright. So I don't know if that's something he's noticed yet, but he wasn't hitting nearly as well as he did in the semi. And kind of, I can see the differences in the swing. So that was kind of the interesting part about the final for me, is how the swing changed from the semi to the final and how drastic the change was in the results. Third game, he played well. He played really well in the third game. Third game, I thought he deserved to win game three. And he went up 4-3, I believe. He ran 7 from the boundary. And then that's when the cameras were starting to cut out, in the middle of game three. So Tom and I were there to see Levi at hoop 8 was down on south boundary and tried to hit Fauzi's ball that was somewhere over by hoop 9. Hits it up to the north boundary and ricochets his striker ball off of hoop 9 to a foot in front on sides at 9. When it should have been off the east boundary. So, and then proceeds to, Fauzi misses the clear from north boundary, and he proceeds to hit, a 4-yard jump perfectly through the hoop. And if he misses that jump, I think Fauzi just sets up in front wired. He has to clear from across the court, and if he doesn't, he's down 5-3 and doesn't have that advantage at hoop 9 anymore. So game 3 really changed off of 2 shots. That onsides at 9, that jump shot. All of a sudden, we're Fauzi's up 4-3. It's 4-4, 5-4, and that's 6-4. And it didn't end up going. I don't know if the game three, Tom, did it end up going 6-4 or 5-all, because I know that Fozzie ended up in the jaws at hoop 10 after Levi hit him in there, but I don't know who ended up running it. I believe I think it was 5-all.
I'm trying to remember now. It was 5-all because Fozzie Fozzie missed the clearance from north boundary. Levi
At
ran
11, right.
hit the peg,
And then Fozzie ran 12
shot
from hoop
12
11.
from north of 11. Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of just unlucky kind of series events. Like I said in the live stream, Levi hit a really nice shot at hoop 9. That ball bouncing off of the hoop and staying right in front of foot out. That's where the luck comes into the game. That's where it's unfortunate. Down 2 games, you're kind of catching momentum a little bit. You think you have a chance to win game 3, and then he hits a nice jump shot, really nice shot that he hit there. So all of a sudden, that game completely flipped. And then he runs hoop 12 from hoop 11 and still loses at hoop 13 by a good first positional shot from West penalty box. So final was disappointing until I'd say game 3. Games 1 and 2 weren't great. Fozzie didn't have too many big clears, not a lot of hoop shots, kind of poor positional play, which is what Tom was talking about earlier. Levi hit great positions. Fozzie kind of was short, long, not getting great positional shots. And just really props to Levi. He center balled, I'd say, probably 80% of his clearances, not only in that match, but throughout the entire week. He was hitting stop shots on 14-yard clearances, and you're like, okay. And
Can't beat that.
it almost looked like he was playing in Egypt. I mean, you look at these games in Egypt, and with the balls they're playing and they're mounted in the slow courts and everything there, they hit stop shots from basically anywhere, and the ball just stops because the ball's, different grooves, different materials. And it felt like Levi was playing in Egypt in that final. I mean, his ball was just stopping, and there was times when he would hit shots from, 7-yard clearance, and the ball stopping exactly where the other ball he just hit was. And you're like, that shouldn't be possible. But no, he was doing that all week. He did not miss hoops. Good positional play, jumped well, good mindset. We saw him get a little slow in that later on in that semi of Jack, but picked it right back up and got the job done. But throughout the week, just really solid play. Same to Fozzie. Unfortunately, kind of disappointed in the final. Good semi against me, played good all week, but just kind of one match short in that final, and then, yeah.
You have anything to add to that, Tom?
I would agree with most of it. I thought I think Levi played so well and I think Fozzie had played really well all the days leading up to that his performance in the final comparatively looked a little worse than I think it truly was in a vacuum. And I'd have to go back and watch the videos again to really look at what he did. One thing I did remark, I think, even during the commentary was that he wasn't taking a lot of maybe more aggressive attempts early on in the game. I think it was hoop 7 before we'd even seen a boundary line hoop shot from him, or a hoop shot longer than 7 yards. And that's not to say he was, doing something like Robert where he's taking a bunch of hoop shots, but they're all from a yard away. He just wasn't getting himself in great position to run hoops, and Levi was doing the rest of them to not let him in position. So I think when you have someone playing as well as Levi was and hitting almost everything perfectly and running hoops from anywhere he wanted to, Levi was the best hoop runner. Barring Blake's semi against Fozzie where he was running hoops from literally 20 yards away at will, Levi was consistently, I think, the best hoop runner all week, just from his consistency at any angle, any 7-yard or less distance, just running it with control, get position or almost position down to the next hoop from a 5-yard angled hoop shot, just consistently.
Right.
I think that level of play not only sort of takes away from the way Fozzie played because it didn't allow him a lot of opportunities, but also you just come away from it with this sort of idea that he was playing really well and this guy didn't do any of that, so he must not have been playing really well. I will say Fozzie didn't play his best, but I think I would give more emphasis to just Levi was in one of the best forms I've seen a croquet player be in for the majority of that final match. I was harping on it the whole time, just being we saw him do this yesterday. First 2 games really strong, and then third game he lost to Jack because Jack was playing steady and he just wasn't the same guy. And I was part of that game 3. I was thinking we're about to see that because he did seem to be slowing down and Fozzie was finding the gas. But then that little flip at hoop 8 and hoop 9 kind of reignited him, and he finished it out. So it's always hard to make comparisons when you have players at that level because winning and losing or playing well and playing not well can be the difference of just a couple of one bad shot every other hoop or one bad shot a hoop. It's in the grand scheme of 10, 20 shots a hoop. That's not that much, but it does make a difference.
Yeah, it was interesting how it went differently in the final than kind of expected because he was in that game with Jack that went so late, and then Fauzi had the easier day, right? The shorter day, I guess I should say. So it felt like it would be the opposite. But yeah, and I guess watching it too, I thought the same thing, that Fauzi finally was going to start coming around in game 3. But yeah, that clearance where you put Hoop, end up with the black ball in front of Hoop 9, like I think
Flashbacks.
that kind of broke it, broke the chance of getting game 3 and then making it extend out.
Yeah, that shot was one of the craziest outcomes I'd seen all week.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we lost our composure a little bit when we saw that. It was just, I did. I was like, oh no.
Yeah, I believe the term was
I felt bad for Fozzie. He should, that was pure luck on Levi's part. But
Tom ran into some PTSD on that shot, but
yeah,
no, we've all had that shot hit against us. Not necessarily that same outcome, but just crazy shots happening. Balls end up on sides. Ball ends up in a jaws. I think Jana earlier in the week had a shot at hoop 5. She was down 4-0, I think, and she hit a clearance at hoop 5, ended up in the jaws of hoop 6, ran 5, and was already in the jaws of 6. So sometimes you have those shots where it's like you can't do anything about it.
I didn't see that.
No, I saw it. It was on court 5, I believe.
That's
It was
crazy.
just one of those games on the court right next to me, and everyone was like, whoa. So sometimes you cannot do anything about the outcome of some shots, but it's just how it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've kept you guys for a while. I really appreciate you guys taking some time to talk about it. Enjoyed it. And I'm going to say, to all the people watching, be sure and subscribe. Helps us do more content, and like or whatever. But I don't know, do you guys have any closing thoughts before we sign off?
Just want to thank everyone, again, involved in making that tournament so much fun. Jeff and Eileen Sue, Mike Albert, Sarasota County Croquet Club, Venice, Florida, all the sponsors. It was really, I think Hans Peterson said at the closing ceremony that, a tournament like that can run up to $40,000 and takes up more than a week of the court time on a very popular club. So you have hundreds of people making sacrifices financially or just in their time and their exposure to their facilities to make that happen. And it was just wonderful to see everyone support the youth, and we're going to have to play a lot harder if we want to keep our spots because they're coming.
Yeah, definitely same thing as Tom. Jeff and Eileen, they run a great tournament, refereeing, directing. Bunch of donors donate a lot of money making that tournament happen. Michael, and then a few other people just playing in that tournament. They said for 5 years. So it's not just like, oh, you have this tournament, here's a couple months to play in it. No, it was 5 years. Bunch of hosting people when they came in, places to stay, people making food, a lot of referees, commentating, thanks to Russ. Just a bunch of people that went into all their club members all volunteering like they always do down at that club. Very welcoming place down there in Florida, and good croquet courts. They got very good towards the end of the week. They started slow, they got better, so they have a good grounds crew, great group of volunteers. So yeah, a lot of fun down there.
All right, perfect. Thank you guys.
Awesome, thank you.